Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norville Barrington, the Vice President of Communications for the National Black MBA Metro New York chapter. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today's conversation is a very hot topic and a great opportunity for us to delve into careers in media, especially careers at WarnerMedia. We have recruiters from both the East Coast and West Coast, which we'll introduce in a moment. I'll also introduce our host as well. At this time, I would like to introduce our president, the president of the Metro New York chapter, Andrew Hamilton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another digital series from National Black MBA Metro New York chapter. It's great for you guys to join us today about another career opportunities and one of our great partners. And also, it's a great opportunity to connect. I know many of us are doing many things right now, working from home remotely that has a new catchphrase to it, but it also gives us opportunity to connect, dial in, and learn new ways to move ahead and get ahead. And I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue. So Kevern is our host, Brian is our guest, and other guests from the West Coast as well. And our membership, our esteemed membership that helps us move our agenda ahead. And I'm really looking forward to the dialogue. And again, we also invited our friends from the LA chapter, Black MBA LA. Their president, John, will say a few words at the end of this webinar. But again, welcome, and enjoy. Thank you for coming out. Thanks, Norville and Kevern, for allowing me to give me this intro. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And again, please use the chat feature, which will be available to you for any questions throughout this webinar. I have the great opportunity and the pleasure to introduce our host for today, Kevern Anderson, who's our Director of Employment, and we'll walk through our presentation today. Thank you very much. Kevern?
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to thank WarnerMedia and HBO for taking this time for joining us and, to talk to us about, as a part of our professional development series, to highlight, we like to highlight our partners, that is doing stuff in the community. Also, still, true, just try to highlight them of what they're going through during this time, during the COVID crisis. And also, on them, hiring diverse talent. So today we have Brian DiLibero and Laura Barria. Brian is from the East Coast and Laura is from the West Coast. So as we go ahead, let me just start with you, Laura. I just want to introduce you and just tell me about yourself, how long you've been with WarnerMedia.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevern. So I've been with WarnerMedia for about 2 years now. I started out handling entry-level financial analysts and then have moved into recruiting for also human resources, accounting, and legal positions. So as far as my scope, I support primarily Warner Brothers based out of Burbank. I've also worked with the HBO Santa Monica office as well as Turner, so TNT and TBS. All of those brands do have offices in the LA area, and I support full cycle business recruitment for them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And Brian, that represents the East Coast. Thank you for joining us today. And if you just want to talk a little bit about yourself as well. Oh, I think you're on mute, Brian.
Sorry, I thought you guys had me on. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having us talk with everybody today. My name is Brian DiLibero. I work out of Hudson Yards in New York City for WarnerMedia. We've been in that building for just about a year now, but I've been with WarnerMedia for about 7 years. I've covered multiple businesses from a recruiting standpoint, and I manage a team that covers a lot of the operations that happen at WarnerMedia now, as far as finance, control, business affairs, legal, corporate communications. And it's been an exciting time here for the last year, especially with HBO Max launching at the end of the month. So it's been fun trying with the virus, but it's been good.
Great. And, speaking of the virus and, COVID-19 and what, everyone is dealing with, I'm just wondering, how has WarnerMedia and HBO have been, supporting, I guess, their employees, communities and stuff. How do you say, from a West Coast perspective, what's been, WarnerMedia been doing to support their members, their employees?
Yeah, that is a great question. I was struck with how quickly the company responded, not only to, having us work from home. We were one of kind of the leaders in that space in LA in the entertainment field, but also the constant communication. So what our leadership started doing was every few days they would do leadership updates. And even though it would be like a Zoom call from, say, the global head of HR or the global, president of the company, even set up from their kitchen, just kind of telling us what they knew about the situation, things, any updates that were going on, and really kind of making sure we were doing okay in this virtual setting. Something else that I love that our company's been doing, they've been very flexible. If there's anything that's loosely related to COVID that we have to deal with, from family reasons and whatnot, they're encouraging us, don't necessarily use sick time for that. We're very supportive of that, and we want to continue to support you through any of those challenges. So not to clock sick time, basically, for those sort of reasons.
Okay, great. And I take it that they're doing the same for you over here, Brian, Hudson Yards. I know for my company, I work for the city of New York. They've been, real supportive of anyone that, caught the COVID or, family member that's, been impacted. They've been paying everyone's salary, at this time, and making sure that instead of, the FMLA or, any other leave, federal leave, they normally have additional benefits that they've been given so far. What about you, Brian? Have HBO and WarnerMedia provided those services?
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what Laura said, the company's just been extremely proactive with any local things happening with the virus, but they've been good in ways of corporate social responsibility as well. We have a nice intranet at the company, right? So any kind of updates they've put on there, but when it comes to like corporate and social responsibility, there have been many things where we can donate and the company will match for different organizations and foundations. I think in regards to like wellness, the company's done really well with having virtual classes, whether it's exercise or mental. We do have a health hub in Hudson Yards that has doctors and nurses there, and they've offered services as well to employees virtually, which is great. So they've really stepped up, which is nice.
Great. HBO and WarnerMedia, they've been like they have the best programs. I'm just talking personally, from Sopranos to Game of Thrones, The Wire. How has it been? You've been there for almost since 2012, you said. I know you also been there for a number of years, Laura. Brian, from your perspective, like, how's it been working there? Like, how's the company itself? How's the culture?
That's a good question. And I think Laura can weigh in on this as well. But since we have been purchased by at&t, I feel like Time Warner was almost like a holding company, and HBO, Turner Broadcasting, Warner Brothers, we all operated, in our own spaces, right? But since at&t has purchased Time Warner, we rebranded WarnerMedia, and they've kind of reorganized the company in a way where we are truly like more of a global company, and finance teams are working across New York, Atlanta, and Burbank and LA. Our teams are integrating more. We've been going through a lot of change, but I think it's all been really, really good. And hopefully in the next, I would say, once HBO Max drops, we'll be able to see see, you know, how our content creation and our distribution is going to be over the next couple of years. So I'd say the culture is good, but it's been a culture of change, right? Like whether it's, you know, teams, leadership, systems, it's all been, you know, everything changes. You have to be on your feet, on your toes, willing to do things that you maybe didn't do if you were part of one of these legacy companies. But I think it's been exciting. It's just we're still figuring out our WarnerMedia culture, but it's I think things are on the right road. I don't know if you have anything to piggyback on, Laura.
Yeah, sure. To add on to what Brian said, I do think, you know, people who are adaptable and able to thrive and change and innovation, that's really kind of the new culture that's coming out as a result of the merger. You know, looking for people who are agile and can thrive in a, you know, environment that's constantly changing. I can honestly say, even in 2 years, I started right when the at&t merger happened, and it's been full speed ahead with just the pace and speed of changes. And so it's definitely an exciting place. You know, some of the fun, I would say, you know, each individual company still retains some element of fun and the perks that they offer. So what I love about being based at Warner Brothers, you know, everybody's a fan of something of some sorts. You'll find Wonder Woman, you know, swag everywhere, DC comics that people just hand out to each other. You know, I'm personally a huge Game of Thrones fan, and so that's what's exciting to me about the expansion. It's like, you know, all of these brands are intertwined, and there's so much more opportunity for kind of these cross partnerships and strategies.
Okay, great to hear about the company and, you know, representation of it. And, you know, I just want to, you know, go back to, you know, with the COVID crisis, you've seen the numbers that came out with the, you know, the unemployment. You know, people are searching for jobs, and, you know, you guys being recruiters, I know you guys have your do's and don'ts of, you know, what to do in these times, because the market right now is very competitive. So what would you say is the best way for people to start strategizing in terms of, you know, finding new jobs or, you know, looking for new opportunities? And Brian, you could start.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an interesting time, but I think if you've been a job explorer, whether you're coming out of school, whether you're, you know, professional level or manager level, there's always an art to how you can approach companies and apply for roles. I would say, you know, for the most part, the company has put a lot of our recruiting efforts on hold at this time. So if anybody's been to the WarnerMedia career site and you visit it routinely because we're a company of interest, you'll notice that, you know, we've gone from like thousands of jobs down to, you know, the hundreds. And when you break it down to what space you're looking at, it's even fewer. So I think if you are legitimately qualified for a role or really fit, you know, the level of something that's being advertised, it is always good to apply. But I think working your networks, people who may work at the company, getting any kind of introductions on during this downtime, right? Like just posting your resume for a job has never been the wisest thing to do. And now more than ever, you really have to leverage your networks to get conversations or get inside information about an opportunity. And I think, you know, to ease the mental state of that, if you're really looking for a role, you know, information has been slow, and there's a lot of folks like Laura and I who are on the front line who try to talk to as many people as possible and engage with communities this way. You know, we don't have that crystal ball to know when, you know, we're going to be able to greenlight a whole bunch of roles, but the conversations that you have, taking the time to do these sorts of things, will position yourselves better for when things start to open up or if things are active. You know, I'd say that's the best way to go about it, but that takes effort, right? So whether it's LinkedIn chapters, LinkedIn groups, this chapter that you guys, have put together, any other media and entertainment group. I think these are the things you have to leverage to get ahead of, competitors.
Okay.
To add on to Brian's points, a lot of the jobs that are posted because the team knows that there's something that can be done virtually. And so as a recruiter, I am asking candidates these newer questions about working from home and how comfortable are you in that sort of situation? How do you keep yourself on task when you don't have your supervisor right there with you? Walk me through your organizational process when, each day when you have a big to-do list, things like that. And so I think now is a good time to really think about those things of how can am I thriving in this virtual environment? And if not, what can I do to make sure that I am getting myself there? Is it a class that I need to take? Do I need to get more organized? Because I think recruiters are asking a lot of those questions, knowing that the jobs that are posted might start virtually for quite a while. And then the other thing I would say, kind of echoing some of Brian's thoughts, because some recruiting is slow for some companies, I do feel like a lot of professionals are posting on LinkedIn, happy to be a resource to people from my alma mater, or, I'm happy to review your resume, so take advantage of those things, I would say, especially kind of reaching back to people in your, maybe alumni chapters who have offered to help in some way. I think now is a great time, and people might have a little bit of downtime to do more of those informational kind of virtual calls.
Okay, great. I just want to piggyback back off something that you said, Laura. Learning new skills. So, what skills would you recommend people learn in these times? So, any soft skills or any type of thing to be better in terms of organization-wise. Any skills that you would recommend learning now?
Sure. So, a lot of our hiring teams are using a ton of different project management software. Having to keep in touch virtually is not always easy. So, a lot of my teams in finance are using things like Slack or Microsoft Teams. So those are some of the tools that I try to ask people about. What are some collaboration tools, you've used before, because that's the reality right now. It's not in person. And so that having that ability to be organized through these sort of platforms is important. And then, softer skills, definitely self-motivation. That is something that if, hiring managers are on the fence at all, because somebody would have to start in an environment where it's a lot of virtual training and they can't necessarily check up on them, that's something we're definitely looking for anybody who's starting in a virtual space.
Okay.
Brian, I don't know if you have any other skills to add.
I would say when it comes to being comfortable on video interviewing, just knowing your audience as well, like it's a big shock to our industry for all of our hiring managers to do their interviews via video, right? They've relied so much in the past on, face-to-face interaction and reading people's mannerisms like up close. I think not knowing that this could be uncomfortable for the person on the other side of the video is something that you need to sharpen up on as well, because there are a lot of new hiring managers across our organization that, one, don't hire too often, but two, they definitely don't do a video all the time, right? So not only being comfortable in your own shoes, but having some empathy and a way of knowing that you might have to go a little further just to get your point across or make that synergy or connection, because there's a good chance that, like Laura said, you could get hired and get virtually onboarded, and that's the way your relationship's going to start. And I think that's a big thing as far as, the competition in interviewing for roles these days.
Okay, great. And, a lot of people, at this time, you said that, in terms of recruiting or looking for jobs, they use LinkedIn and, all these other different platforms. Do you have any other example or any other information maybe people could use while looking for jobs at this time?
I mean, there are numerous outlets to look for roles. I always consider myself a little bit old school and say it's all in who you know. But I just feel like networking is what you need to do. And that's happening a lot virtually, right? Like, so don't be one dimensional, right? Like somebody like myself might only look at LinkedIn for roles, but people are advertising roles like they've never advertised before, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There are some companies are being pretty innovative, right? So, if you're spending time digitally on the web, like I would look at different social channels to try to uncover roles. And then ultimately, if you haven't talked to old colleagues before, if you've moved on, if you've gone from college to being a professional, and if you've been a professional to a manager and a director, then, call folks that you used to work with, right? Like it's good to have those conversations because that can lead to other conversations. It's somewhat basic, but I think now more than ever with that connectivity, that'll get you, in front of or to a company that might be ideal for you to keep on your short list of places you want to work.
Okay, great. So I just want to mention that at times people, when they're looking for jobs, like they have, different ideas or they get different examples of what to do or what not to do. What are things would you recommend people not doing when they're looking for jobs in terms of their resumes, how they approach people virtually or, through LinkedIn? What are some of the don'ts, as, talent acquisition managers?
I'm sure we can both go on this one. I'm going to go with the obvious, right? Like I've had people show up at Hudson Yards and try to get to my floor through security. like that's a major no-no. I also think the repetitive, whether it's if you're trying to get to somebody via LinkedIn or another platform, having some etiquette to that, right? Like if you're going to reach out to somebody, then do it once, maybe a follow-up, but the repetitive day after day after day is a major turnoff. I'm trying to think of some other things that have like been major turnoffs, but a lot of that stuff I always viewed from the office, and now from like working from home, I guess I'm seeing less of it just because we have less jobs on our career site. But I don't know, any other like standout not to do's, Laura?
Sure. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to unmute Laura just to make sure that she could speak. Just having a little issue here.
There we go.
Froze.
Thank you.
Oh, you're good? Okay.
Yeah. So as far as the initial kind of LinkedIn outreach to recruiters, I would say a faux pas I see is candidates saying, do you have anything I can be considered for? Instead of doing the research on the front end. Brian's touched on this before, a lot of recruiters specialize in different functions and they might list those on their application, on their LinkedIn profile. So to me, it's most impressive to hear from a candidate who knows I recruit for corporate, versus like creative or technology, and has specifically pinpointed a job that they're interested in and included that link in that message. For me, I'm much more likely, just because of the volume we receive, to want to help that person out, knowing that they already did their research, they know the type of finance or legal position or whatever it might be, and they're kind of helped me set up for success as well to help them. So that would be what I would say for the outreach piece. For the initial phone interviews, I'm usually looking for kind of the technical qualifications, general interest, and again the research piece, knowing what is what are some of our brands from WarnerMedia? I've had somebody say to me before, when I asked them, you know, what was your favorite WarnerMedia, you know, TV or show or whatever, and they answered with Marvel, which is Disney. So for me, that was a big faux pas, because it's like, you know, you definitely got to do your research ahead of time. You know, to their credit, they're probably thinking DC Comics or whatever. But things like that, you know, can be a red flag. You know, have those show that interest, have those talking points ready and questions ready to go. That's another red flag to me if a candidate has no questions at the end. Unfortunately, that does convey kind of a little bit of a lack of preparation and research.
Okay, great. So, you know, one thing that candidates tend to do, you know, they want to get into a new industry. A lot of people with their MBA, or if they're undergrad, they want to get into a new industry. They've been working in the industry for a while, and, you know, probably from supply chain, you know, and they want to say they want to go over to entertainment. So what's some of the ways they could show their transferable skills, or what transferable skills are you looking for if they're coming from a different industry?
That's always I've always found that that's a tough one. And for me, being at HBO when it was just a small company in a small, tight-knit space, being part of the media and entertainment space was really tough to edge somebody in there if they didn't have that type of experience. I think the best thing that you can do is try to get, and again, it comes back from networking. Like, if you can't get in front of somebody at the company to vouch for your potential when it comes to your finance or technical expertise, it's very difficult. So paying attention to groups like yourself, right, that have relationships with us, like if there are people on this call that have, you know, gotten their MBAs and they're in the consumer product space, or they're in aerospace, right? It's a good thing for you to link up with Laura and I and try to spark conversation about why you want to be in the media space. You're going to have direct contact with the both of us. You need to like seize these opportunities all the time, because if you take the angle of just trying to reach out from an internet, just like applying or the internet, it's very difficult. Somebody like Laura and I, you know, I am constantly receiving hundreds of emails via LinkedIn, and sometimes even my inbox, right? You need to capitalize on situations like this where you've heard Laura and I speak, and you have that connection with us that we're going to talk further about. You know, yeah, you may have done this. How can we keep introducing you? How can we introduce you to people that you can start, you know, somewhat elevator pitching yourself to kind of make it over, you know, to become more attractive if you don't have, you know, your NBC, your Viacom, your Scripps, Discovery, you know, experience that sometimes we tend to look at just because the landscape is the same.
Laurie, do you have anything? Oh, you're still having some issues? Oh, wait, I could see that it's still, oh, there you go.
Perfect. I'm just going to stop pressing the mute button for my head. So I think for corporate positions, for my end, I do have a little bit of a different perspective on that. I think that there are certain roles in finance or HR or accounting, you know, that would value the maybe like a large large company experience, or something that Brian touched on, for example, like if somebody worked in merchandise, we have a whole consumer products division. So I think it's just about matching your experience to the job at hand. You know, it can be challenging. I will say, like, if you are going to prioritize which positions to apply to versus others, if there's a finance position, for example, but it's in production, like 9 times out of 10, that team is going to want entertainment experience, because the world of production is so unique. But if it's for, you know, corporate accounting position where all they're asking for is kind of like the CPA route, consulting, you know, I think there are some transferable skill sets there. So I think it's just knowing kind of that difference. There are certain roles that you can tell from the job description, they're very creative and very closely like a very kind of niche skill set. And then there's others that are a little bit more broad. That might be you're doing accounting for the entire company or things like that. So hopefully that somewhat helps.
Great point, Laura.
Yeah, great point. So, you know, going through, a lot of times people complain that, you know, their resumes goes into the black hole. You know, they apply on jobs and stuff. And how would you say, like, what's the best resume, you know, so the ATS system that a lot of companies use, including where I work as well, you know, could pick up on the resume that you guys get. You know, for example, they send it in, probably don't really know someone at the company or haven't met anyone in the company, but they go through the system and they send it in through the ATS system. So what would you recommend in terms of like looking at the best resume, you know, to get through in the system? And we can start with you, Laura.
Sure. So, you know, in these mass recruitment systems, a lot of times recruiters just look at the most recent position, unfortunately. And so it's super important that top position on your resume is somewhat matches the job description or is relevant to the job at hand. You know, we do also look for keywords. So, you know, in finance, make sure you on your resume somewhere you're listing every single one of the softwares you've worked in as a bullet point at the bottom, technical skills or something like that. You know, we would sometimes we might pass by on people because the team is looking very specifically for SAP, and if it's not listed on your resume, but it comes up later, I would hate for that, you know, to happen, to find out, oh, you actually did have this experience, but I passed because it wasn't on your resume. So make sure to include for more technical finance, you know, positions that are requiring certain softwares, include all relevant softwares you can think of as a bullet point. I'm trying to think. I think that's it for my end that I can think of.
I think keywords is a big thing, but I think a lot of times these days people are looking for jobs in different locations. And you know, if you're in New York and you're looking for a job in Atlanta, then I would work really hard to try to find an Atlanta address that's feasible or is doable. Only because, again, when we're searching through thousands of resumes and we're doing gaps of years and, you know, where people are located, I feel like an easy disqualifier is people sometimes that are not in you know, that particular state or region. And some people don't think of that, but a lot of times when you have thousands of people and we're searching and we're looking for the top dozen folks, that's an easy way to get knocked right out of something, especially if you're qualified for the role.
Okay, great. Let's see if we have any questions that came up. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Let's see any questions that came up in the chat. Okay. So one person asks, Brian, you mentioned finding someone within the company to vouch for your potential. Would you advise that we try to find hiring managers, or will other contacts within the company suffice?
Yeah, I think there's degrees of that, right? Like, I always back into things. If I am looking for, or, you know, if I know that I want to work at a place in Hoboken, I live in Hoboken, so everybody knows now. But like, when I look on LinkedIn and I look at companies and I look for who's in my network, or I try to like track down who may be hiring for the role, I just try to be a bit strategic about it, right? Like, some things are a big stretch, and I think those are the things that there's too much, you might not get the result that you're looking for, right? So sometimes it's difficult. Maybe you don't have the reach at a particular a particular company. But if you're going to go in, I think approaching talent acquisition, human resource folks, looking at whatever connection you can figure out from a company, right? Like at HBO, WarnerMedia, we have internal alumni groups on LinkedIn. I would look there to see how far of a degree I am away from somebody. Really, I would just be strategic about how you approach the company. And sometimes it doesn't pan out because you don't know anybody there, but then at least maybe you should stop following that company. Maybe you should start engaging in whatever kind of communities they have. Like, I feel like our company makes it pretty easy with our business resource groups, all of our programming, everything from Twitter to, on down. Like, there are ways that you may have to start from, you might have to start a couple steps back because you don't know somebody who knows somebody. But I would be strategic about that and not just try to get in front of a hiring manager. Odds are those folks are very busy and they're not going to respond and they're not going to read into, what you're really trying to get across.
Okay, great. You mentioned, business resource, and that's, a good thing. How does HBO, the talent acquisition unit or group, leverage working with the resource groups at the organization?
So I think right now, that's an interesting piece of WarnerMedia being part of at&t. at&t's employee resource groups or business resource groups are so massive, and they're trying to harmonize those. But there is, I would say, internally, we try to pass our jobs to those business resource groups. Like, just to name a couple, like in HBO, there's a veterans group, there's Alianza, which is the Latino community, there's Mosaic, which is the Asian community, there's a millennial business resource group as well. We share jobs with them. A lot of times the back and forth, we end up at their events. So that's a good way to meet recruiters as well. So there's a communication and a cadence that we have with them. Some of the groups we work with a little bit stronger than others. But that always is just because of change, or like I said, we've been going through a lot of change here. But we try to actively stay on each other's calendars, events-wise, and what we have for opportunities.
Okay, great. Do you have anything to add, Laura, in terms of how you work on the West Coast with your resource groups?
Yeah, so we do also have various resource groups at Warner Brothers. A lot of what Brian mentioned, but kind of the West Coast version. And we do also have a diversity and inclusion team that partners with those groups to kind of send us referrals. So yeah, to Brian's point, those are always great networks to tap into.
Oh, okay, good. So I have one more question here in the chat. I can give this over to you, Laura. Conversely, I am someone who started my career in broadcast communications, parentheses, writing, editing, promotion, who subsequently moved into the BPO space with my finance and IT MBA degree. Would it be advisable for me to explore corporate or creative opportunities now, 10 years out?
That's a good one. Well, I think my question is which do you prefer? Where do you really see your career going from here? Realistically, recruiters might be inclined to look at you for more of the finance and IT side, if that's something that's more recent. But for a large company like WarnerMedia, there are ways where you can maybe have the best of both worlds. You could work in finance, looking at the P&L for HBO original programming, or things like that. There's a lot of crossover, I think, within entertainment. So that could perhaps be a way to flex both of those interests that you have, looking for jobs that have some sort of crossover between those functions.
Okay, cool. So someone just asked, since we're going through this crisis now, is there any training and management development positions now available that you guys are hiring for?
Did you say management development?
Sure. Let me just get the correct question. Sorry.
Kind of like OD, Brian, organization development,
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Are there roles such as training and communication, change management available, especially since there has been an acquisition between AT&T and Warner?
So those roles are definitely, they're not actively available right now. I think we call it the organizational effectiveness group at WarnerMedia. And that's a combination of like learning and development, OD, and talent management. I think a lot of those roles have been paused due to the virus, but they do have those roles available. I know of one on the East Coast, but it is paused.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we certainly do have a fairly large team. It is at the WarnerMedia level versus tied to a specific, Warner Brothers, HBO, etc.
Okay. So I have another question. Good afternoon. I have 8 years experience in retail working as a customer service rep. Also have my MBA in media and communication arts, and I've volunteered with a nonprofit organization as their social media coordinator. I'm looking into changing careers. Should I look into a corporate role or more of a creative role? What would be your recommendation?
I would roll the dice with both. That's a good mix of experience, and I feel like a WarnerMedia is big enough where they may have opportunities that you could leverage both of those skill sets. I'm trying to think of anything to like point you in the right direction, like right now. But I think the corporate, we don't have a ton of retail here, but I think I think what people need to, or if you're looking at this company, being part of AT&T, I feel like they're so massive that they have maybe roles that you can slide into there. And when I tell you that AT&T and WarnerMedia are so big on mobility in your career through the companies, it's a priority for them, right? So even moving into AT&T, building your experience there and getting endorsements and becoming an internal candidate for WarnerMedia companies is a very smart route to take.
Yeah. One thing I want to, say is that mobility is one of the things that people normally ask for in regards to a company. I know that you mentioned mobility, but in terms of having an opportunity to move around, is that something that WarnerMedia, AT&T provide?
I can take a stab at that one. Absolutely. AT&T is a very renowned leadership development program that we partner with. So I think it's like a 2 to 3 year finance development program with the goal of placing them into finance positions somewhere, either AT&T or WarnerMedia's brands. So absolutely, I think that's something that we're very big on. I think I tend to see most of the movement happen in finance because just the nature, I think, of finance professionals, you spend couple of years at the analyst, get promoted, couple of years at the senior financial analyst, get promoted, et cetera. And so there is a lot of cross mobility and transfers and things like that can happen with all corporate roles really, but I would say I think finance definitely emphasizes this a lot.
Okay, great. Let's see if we have any more questions that came up in the chat. Let's see. Sure. So one more question for Brian. Brian mentioned that jobs being posted now via the COVID era are likely to be remote working opportunities, but he also mentioned having an address that is in the same jurisdiction as a job for which you are applying. Does this mean that companies doing relocation are a thing of the past?
That's a that's a good topic. I think, you know, when it comes to WarnerMedia and its legacy brands, Warner Brothers, Turner, and HBO, you know, we were not remote. We're not a remote employer. Most of the employees, the employee body, showed up to work every day. The company has flexible work arrangements. I do think that we are seeing a lot of industries, a lot of companies are seeing that in certain business units, working remotely is doable. And I think this is going to change the way we for us, maybe even post jobs. We don't post jobs like this is a remote job. I would bet that you can't find almost one job on a career site that ever said that. But I think moving forward, you know, we're going to see more and more of this. And I made that comment before about, like, you know, if you have a friend that lives in Atlanta and you want a job in Atlanta, you know, you should use that address just so you maybe get a call. Like, sometimes that is a disqualifier. But to go back to this question, I think companies like us are probably going to reevaluate the way we do business and the way we utilize our workspace and our workers. And I think you'll see remote working arrangements, you know, increase heavily after this. That was long-winded. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You know, speaking of which, that's something that we're looking at as well in my company. You know, how we're going to go back post-COVID in terms of, you know, what the changes are. You know, the city of New York, people weren't really allowed to work at home until now. So, you know, they're evaluating in terms of spacing. You know, maybe do we need so many buildings? Will people permanently start working from home? You know, and then the global economy, you know, people are going to start probably recruiting from overseas if a lot of jobs becomes, you know, remote working, you know, at this time. So I have another question here. Any advice for a contracts and media attorney with 4 years experience and a master's trying to figure out their way into the organization for a counsel position? Laura, I don't know if you want to take that one.
Sure. Yeah, that can be a tough one. I feel like it's a catch-22 because, you know, a lot of business and legal affairs people in media only want entertainment experience, but then how do you break in is kind of the question. So, you know, I would say sometimes it's about the client that maybe, you know, outside counsel position support. So, you know, you mentioned media attorney, which is great. I think like finding outside counsel positions where you gain exposure to production and contracts and talent and things like that, that can always make a better case than other, you know, other sorts of outside counsel positions. So yeah, I've only worked on these sort of roles a couple times. So Brian, I don't know if you had any insight for that.
Yeah, that's a tough space. I think you know, contract negotiations are a big thing. IP is a big thing. Definitely technology, contracts between companies is a big thing. And that space is interesting. There's not a lot of like consulting or contract roles, which is another good way to like get your foot in the door at WarnerMedia as well. But you know, that's a tough one.
Right. Another idea, I think, when trying to transition from outside counsel into in-house position is, I think, you know, folks should sometimes be open to the level at times. You know, starting out as a business and legal affairs coordinator and then being in a role where you're interacting with people doing what you want to do as a next step. You know, that's could be a step in the right direction, but I think it can be challenging, right, when thinking of if it's like a pay cut and those sort of moves. So it's, you know, all things I think to evaluate. Sometimes you do need to take a slight step back in order to, you know, make the proper connections in order to work your way up in entertainment.
Yeah, and we're going to send out a survey, asking, about more information about WarnerMedia. And, I know you sent over a few jobs that you guys are currently hiring for. And you just want to make sure that, we provide those positions for you to our members and anyone that's on the meeting right now. So, as we go right now, I just want to, take any more last few words, any last recommendation during these times. We can start with you, Laura.
Sure. I would say, it can it can definitely be tough, but staying positive, staying kind of tenacious during your job search. That's something I have to remind myself as a recruiter. Obviously, it's an interesting time, but that speaks volumes. That initial call with the recruiter, we're really looking for that positive attitude, ability to thrive in ambiguity and change, and so being the best possible you on the phone interview is important. And I think just being very creative about the ways you network, as well as understanding of people. I'm sure you guys have all been experiencing it lately. Delays in hiring freezes, dogs and babies popping out in video calls or on phone interviews. And I think we're all in that together, so I think that's good that, we're all very understanding, but being understanding from the other end as well of the companies that you might be trying to recruit for.
Okay, great. What about you, Brian? Any last few words or, and recommendation?
Yeah, I guess because we have this forum right here, right? Like, I would like to pay attention to you guys a bit more. Is there anything that WarnerMedia, Laura, should know about what's going on, or how we can be advertising or working with you so you guys, so we're a little bit more attainable as well, so we can provide direction?
Yeah, so we'll definitely be in contact, in terms of, information and, if we have candidates, that interested in the roles, we'll send them directly over to you. That's what we try to do with our members, just to give them a competitive advantage, and just to see, people can have conversation, see where they fit in. A lot of companies are not hiring right now, a lot of positions, but people are also building pipeline for when, the markets reopen, the jobs reopen. So it's good just to build those kind of connections, especially if they have specific roles that you're looking for. And, how we could, build a community of people that could get actual, especially diverse communities like ourselves as well. So, so I just want to take this time just to thank you. I know you guys have a hard stop today at 5, but I just want to take this time to thank you so much for the information that was shared. I know some more questions that come in. I would love to just connect you with people that probably ask questions. Maybe you guys could answer, off chat, offline. But I just want to take this time just to thank you so much, providing these information. And being here, supporting the National Black MBA. And right now, I just want to turn it back over to Andrew Hamilton, our president of the chapter of New York City.
Norville, can I say one more thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So we're actually posting on LinkedIn and, to your point, on our career site, a couple recs that are just seeking folks in the finance space, since we don't have a lot open, which my team, Laura's team, will be actively combing through to have conversations with people. So for those of you that are here and present, I would say by tomorrow and definitely by Monday on LinkedIn and the WarnerMedia career site, you'll see a seeking finance, financial and senior financial analysts roles. You should apply, and we'll be going through them and hopefully can reach out that way and establish a line of communication as well.
Oh, again, thank you so much, Brian and Laura, for participating in this webinar series. It's fantastic. And again, our members and our network and community we serve greatly appreciate it. What comes to mind with Brian, we just said, as I use an analogy, is the elephant. And the reason why I choose this animal for this metaphor is that everyone sees this large animal walking around in the jungle or the forest in Africa or Southeast Asia, eating the vegetation or eating as it goes along every time. But when a drought happens, the older female elephant in her memory bank is able to remember where the watering hole is to save the herd. And what I'll use an analogy for is that, you know, even during a drought, there's still watering holes to still feed the herd and still feed your family. And with that caveat, I want to say that this group of people, you and I and we, are always looking for these watering holes of knowledge and thirst of knowledge to satisfy and quench our respective communities. So once again, I want to thank you, Brian and Laura, for your time today, for providing this information to our base and to our community. We'll definitely send out those job opportunities and postings out to the respective network. Look out for our real estate series tomorrow, starring Vanetta and Larissa, both respectively from Wells Fargo and Citibank. And again, thank you for participating in this. Without the membership and the community at large, we will never, ever push this forward. And thank you, Kevern. I know you're stepping out on a limb doing this, and I appreciate it. So with that being said, I wish you guys a happy afternoon and look out for the opportunities from the National Black MBA chapter, Metro New York. Thank you.